Dongui. Thank you so much for having me. Hello to everyone. When I learned about this program and I was invited to it, I thought, wow, this is a really interesting way to get the future entrepreneurs trained and exposed to different, not just theory, but application. Speaking with Professor Dongui a moment ago, I learned more about this program, and I have to say, you students are very lucky, and as I joked, I wish I could go back in time and get my degree again and take this course, because I think with the caliber of students and the kind of program that you've set up, it's just going to be interesting to watch how some of the people in this room are going to change the world, literally. So Professor Lee was kind enough to give a brief intro into what I do, which is corporate development, which is this broad term, but it essentially translates into all the non-organic strategic initiatives at the company, and most of my time is spent on mergers and acquisitions. And a little bit about my background, I grew up in a musical family. My father was a musician, mom, everybody was artists. And when I entered college, I actually studied in English literature and philosophy, and I wasn't sure what I was going to do. People said, oh, you should become a lawyer, and I thought that's pretty good training if I do choose to be a lawyer. And halfway through studying the humanities, I decided to change gears, and I started studying electrical engineering and computer engineering. So I ended up getting my degree in engineering, and from there I zigzagged again, and I went into law. I worked at a number of law firms, then a wireless startup, and after that, I ended up at Google, where I was initially a lawyer. For 8 years, I was at Google, but most of that 8 years, I spent doing corporate development. And then in 2011, I joined Facebook. And at Facebook, I've been doing much of the same thing. And it's been an amazing experience, not just because of some of those transactions you've mentioned, but just to be a part of a company that genuinely cares about something that's deeply important to me, which is bringing people together. So, as Professor Lee mentioned, I spend a good deal of time, actually most of my time, with entrepreneurs and startups. And from those discussions, people have asked me, is there a formula? Is there a playbook? Is there a set of steps that you could follow to become a successful entrepreneur? And it would be wonderful if I could stand up here today and say, I've learned that there's a formula, but there isn't a formula. I think when you study technology companies, when you go to a course like this, when you study, successful and failed startups, the pattern that emerges is that there's no pattern. What worked for Apple, what worked for Facebook, what worked for Tencent, Alibaba, Baidu, and you could name all kinds of companies, was different. And I was speaking to my daughters recently, and they were asking me for career advice. And my eldest daughter was asking me about becoming a lawyer, which is something I used to do. And the thing about being an engineer or a lawyer or a doctor is you can actually go and study those professions, and you're not guaranteed that you're going to be great or ultra successful, whatever success means. But I think there's some level of assurance that if you follow certain steps, you go to a certain school, you get a certain internship, you work at a certain firm, you could probably end up getting a job somewhere and being reasonably successful. And some people say it's a safe path in that regard. What we're talking about here today, there really is no formula, and that's what makes it kind of scary. I don't know if you could see this. Does everybody know what this is? Can you see it? A violin. It is a violin, but it's not just any violin. It's a Stradivarius violin, if you've heard of that. It's something that, as a musician, I've always been fascinated by. These violins have been in the hands of some of the best violinists in the world. They still are. They're typically owned by sovereign states and foundations, when they do sell in the market at auction, they sell for tens of millions of dollars. I think one went for over 30 or 40 million dollars recently. This one is in display at the Madrid Royal Palace. And for centuries, violin makers and now scientists at MIT and research institutions of this caliber have been studying these instruments, trying to figure out what is their secret? Why do they sound so amazing? Nobody has figured it out. There's all kinds of theories, and nobody has figured it out. Is it the wood? Is it the dimension? Is it the varnish? Is it the, what happened to trees during that period in the 16th and 17th century in Croatia and Europe and Italy where these woods were acquired? Was it the fact that Stradivarius supposedly would take the wood and put it in the river for 10, 12 years and then dry it out and then use it? Nobody knows. If you study startups and you go to a bookstore, same thing. There's hundreds, if not thousands, of books written by investors, entrepreneurs, lawyers, advisors, and each one says something different. I'll tell you a story. Recently, I was asked by a friend to go sit down with his startup, and not just myself, but around 10, 11 other people. We were sitting around a large table for a whole day. He asked us to come there, and among the people who were there were top investors, top entrepreneurs, some of them serial entrepreneurs. And the reason we were there is that this founder was at a point that, his business had kind of done this and then flattened out. And he wanted to know, should I change my team? Should I change my business plan? Should I change my product? Should I raise money? Should I shut it down? What should I do? And what was amazing is that out of these 10 to 12 experts, nobody could agree on anything. Nobody agreed on just about every single point. And it was just striking to me that even when you get people who have all kind of lived through Silicon Valley and have kind of studied the same startups and what made them successful, again, there was no formula. So I went online and I wanted to see, is there such a thing as a formula? And somebody actually on the technology publication TechCrunch wrote an article and had an actual formula. Success equals ambition plus vision plus execution plus persistence plus luck plus timing. I think we could all agree that even if you apply all this stuff, every factor down to a T, even if you follow what Steve Jobs or Jack Ma or any of the great entrepreneurs did, you are not guaranteed success at this. Here's some quotes from some entrepreneurs you may know, the founder of WhatsApp, the founder of Instagram, and Mark Zuckerberg, the founder of Facebook. Each one of them, if you want to take a couple minutes to look at these, is touting the importance of luck. Okay, so there's no formula, and according to some of the top entrepreneurs, luck plays a big factor. Now, I'm not sure I agree with this necessarily, but if we go back, luck, timing, most people will tell you that's actually something that is largely at play with a startup. And to what degree, again, who knows? Okay, so no formula. You have to have luck on your side and you can't count on it. But then you have this reality, which is that 90% of technology startups fail. 9 out of 10 of technology startups fail. Why do they fail? Who knows? There's all kinds of reasons. So you have to count on luck. There's no formula, and chances are you're going to fail. And if you do fail, you're not alone. You're actually in pretty good company. I don't know, has anybody, show of hands, have you used WhatsApp? So you know what it is. It's a messaging app. Do you know that it started as something that was very different? It was a status app. Did you ever use IM, Instant Messenger, in the old days on the web, and you would set your status to I'm away or I'm here or call me later? That's what WhatsApp started as. And as you can see here, the founder was quoted as saying, "It failed horribly. It was a disaster. It was depressing. Nobody used it." Instagram. Everybody know what Instagram is? Photo sharing app? Started as a service called Bourbon. And Bourbon was a location-based kind of check-in product. Again, failed miserably, as you could see. YouTube. Everybody know YouTube, the video site? Started as a video dating site. Failed miserably. Google. You all know Google? In their famous paper at Stanford University, the founders of Google, Larry Page and Sergey Brin, actually made the statement that they don't think that a search engine could be funded using advertising. And today, obviously, Google has learned a way to be one of the most historically successful advertising platforms in the world. Finally, if you know anybody who started a company, especially a technology company, it will consume you. It's not like being a lawyer or a doctor. You don't just go to work and come home. In terms of your time, in terms of your mind share, you not only worry about yourself, you worry about your team, you worry about your customers, you worry about your investors, you worry about competition, and it requires you to put all of your energy into it. So with all these things, no formula, I have to depend on luck. I'm going to fail. The best have failed. And it's going to be all-consuming. Why would anybody put on armor to go into this battle? It sounds like a losing battle. And I think the simple answer is, you got to really love doing this. And we use love in all kinds of contexts. I fell in love. I love this food. By love here, I mean it needs to consume you. I think it needs to be something that literally pulls you in like a magnet. You feel like, I need to do this, and failure's not going to get in the way. I will figure out the formula for my business, for my time, and hopefully I will make my own luck. I don't know if anyone has seen this documentary. Is there a way to play this here? It won't play. If you get a chance, actually, look up this documentary. It's called Jiro Loves Sushi. It's a beautifully shot and filmed documentary about this older gentleman who, from a young age... Has anyone seen the documentary? You have. What did you think?
It's cool how he kept doing the same thing and how he maintains a very high standard both for himself and for his students. And my friend went to his student's shop, a restaurant, to try the sushi, and they said that they can feel like the sushi has a soul.
That's right. That's right. I mean, I haven't had the fortune of trying it, but that's the sense I get when I watch this film. This is a man who, in the first few minutes of this film, unfortunately we can't watch it, he says once you decide on your occupation, you don't complain. You love what you do. You dedicate yourself to your craft, and there's honor in doing that. And from that, essentially, should follow success. It's not guaranteed, but you should find success through love. If you look at Steve Jobs, the founder of Apple, I've put some emphasis in this quote. He says the only way to truly be satisfied is to do what you believe is great work. And the only way to do great work is to love what you do. And if you haven't found it, keep trying. And I think what we're talking about today, entrepreneurship, with all the factors that we mentioned earlier, the risks, the uncertainty, the lack of a formula, the all-consumption that it requires of you, there's no other way. You actually have to love it. You have to believe that there's something there and it's pulling you towards building this thing. Because all the odds, unlike many other professions, are against you. So the thing that love also does for you is it makes you realize that failure is not only okay, not only can you make it past failure, but it's actually a required ingredient. What do I mean by that? You know Michael Jordan? Maybe the greatest basketball player of all time? He says it really well. He says, I've failed over and over and over again in my life, and that is why I have succeeded. I'm going to skip that slide. So we talked about these examples. In each one, when you actually study what they started as in that early failure that they experienced, whether it's YouTube, Instagram, WhatsApp, and countless other companies, you see that and I was having this discussion with students right before coming in here who were sharing some of their ideas. Some of you are in here right now. And I mentioned this a few times, which is, they said, in some of these discussions earlier, I have this possible business model for my idea, and I have this other possible business model. And the question was, which one should I follow? Which one should I pursue? And my reply to that was, I don't know which one, but it's okay to try one, learn from your users, fail, and then you build something successful. So in the case of Instagram, for example, when they launched Bourbon, the location service that I mentioned earlier, they noticed that people aren't really using it, and there aren't a whole lot of people using it, and with almost any measure, they themselves said it was a failure. But what they did notice is that people were sharing photos a lot, and they realized, hey, there might be something there. And they switched gears, and from that, they built something that I think we could all agree was successful if you look at it today. 700 million people use it. It's a nice service. So, not only will you welcome failure if you love what you do, but you will hopefully quickly realize what to focus on. And I think this is also very important. So what you focus on is, again, non-formulaic. If you're a restaurant, your business is a restaurant. If you're a dinner restaurant and you serve fine food versus a lunch restaurant that serves quick food for people who are coming in for lunch, if you're the dinner restaurant, you might focus on what is the atmosphere? What is the service like? Is the food top-notch? If you're a lunch restaurant, you focus on speed and cost. So as these quotes show, for Apple, quality and aesthetics has always been a huge focus. For Google, from the earliest days, when you look at, again, that paper that Larry and Sergey wrote at Stanford on PageRank, which formed the basis of the Google search engine, what they talk a lot about is relevancy and speed and having non-biased results. And to this day, I think they focused on that, and they've, over time, the Google homepage that has very little on it, the redesigns have generally been to remove more and more pixels and make it more and more simple, so it loads faster. So it actually gets you to the information and you leave. But if you have a video site, for example, you might want to be thinking about, how do I make it sticky? How do I focus on keeping users there? So in the case of WhatsApp, the focus is generally, as Jan Kumas pointed out, has been on non-sexy elements, on speed, on reliability. And if you think about it, for a messaging app, I message you and I say, I'm going to be late tonight getting home. I need to know that that message got through. I need to know that you got notified. I need to know that it's reliable. It doesn't have to be beautiful. It doesn't have to have a lot of features. It just has to work. So going back to my example, this is actually something that Steve Jobs would basically tell teams at Apple when he'd tell them, this is not high quality enough, this is not good enough, is, will you use this product yourself? And a lot of tech companies in the Silicon Valley have this concept of dog fooding, which is having your employees actually test out the products and use the product, not just test them out, use them on a daily basis to see what the problems are and to what to focus on. But in the tech world, these days, being an entrepreneur, unfortunately, has become a little bit synonymous with something sexy. And given what we talked about earlier, that most of the time you're going to fail, that there is no formula, that it is going to consume you, that you need luck, it's really important to not only love what you do, but to actually focus on the elements of that thing that are valuable. So, give you again an example. One of the famous kind of, to what extent it's true or not around one of the technology companies I've mentioned earlier was that they weren't interested in giving interviews to the media. They weren't interested in profiles. They weren't interested in signs outside their office. They weren't interested in titles and business cards and logos or anything like that. They were just interested in building the product, iterating on the product, keeping it working. Because that was absolutely instrumental when you look back in time to their success. And finally, this concept of learning, growing, and adapting. This is something that came up again and again, even in the discussions I had right before coming in this room with some of you about your ideas that you're working on, is that when you look at most of these examples again, of technology companies that were successful and founders who were successful, and you look at them and you go back and you look at the interviews, you look at the product and then you look at interviews with the founders themselves, it's almost like, wow, it's a different company, it's a different product, it's a different service altogether. And I mean, let's take Google, for example. It started off as a search engine. Shortly after or before it went public, they had an initiative where they were scanning all of the world's books. Does anybody remember this? They were going to scan the world's books and put it online. And then they invested in energy. They've invested in self-driving cars, AI, video, messaging. They have the world's #1 mobile operating system. This is because, especially in the technology world, you cannot stop learning. You can't stop adapting. If you do, you will fall behind. And the last thought I want to leave you with is that I don't think, this is an amazing program as I've learned even more today in terms of being a multidisciplinary program. Engineering, business, economics, science, bioscience. And I think the greatest at any art, and I think entrepreneurship is an art, is when you gain perspective. And you gain perspective by traveling, by studying art, by studying science, and becoming multidisciplinary. Going back to Steve Jobs, he studied calligraphy. And one of my favorite quotes from him is when he says that the people who developed the Macintosh computer were not just the world's greatest computer scientists, but they were poets, and they were musicians, and they were zoologists. And it was that perspective that they actually had a fuller understanding of their customer and even the kind of people you're going to hire around you to build your product. Thank you.